Going to call to order the regular council meeting of March 14th. We've got an open mic and a few people registered for it, so I'll call on Cam Dick first to see if he's online. Okay. Then we will move along to Amanda Rule. We might be postponing our open microphone. Is Mahmood in from Dr. Smartphone? Perfect. We are going to move open mic later into the session. And for an adoption of the agenda, I've got a couple additions. One is the subdivision and appeal board appointment and lifting a motion regarding the internal borrowing. So that will be (16G). Was a motion regarding the internal borrowing of bylaw. No question, not a statement. Bylaw, okay.
Yes.
So that'll be 12B. Anything else? Councillor Nelson.
Yes, I'd like to add the Ukraine acknowledgement. Please and thank you.
(16H). Anything else? Is Gabby online?
Council, did you see the motion pop up on your computers by chance? It's working. Councillor Blatz, were you able to see it on your screen remotely?
Hasn't been working at all. Like, I am able to sign in, but honestly, like, the entire thing isn't even popping up as far as color coding or anything like that. So I'm not sure if iCompass even works remotely.
Okay, we'll just have to have you turn your camera on for voting today, please.
You got it.
Anything else? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? I don't have it on my screen, so.
Oh,
Well, I don't have it on my screen, so I
Okay.
can't see.
okay.
Carried unanimously. Okay, we've got two of our open mic registrants here. We will go back to that agenda item. Welcome, Cam. We'll get you to come up to the front here. Please just make sure that microphone is on.
We just test this, yeah.
You're good.
Wonderful. Good to see so many of you guys. Hope everyone's doing well. Thank you for your time today. I wanted to come and just have a very brief conversation with you guys about the Alberta government's plan or proposition to move to an Alberta police force. I'm not going to sit here and take you through note by note on the proposal and some of the research that I've done, but I did bring with me today some information from the NPF town hall that they hosted last month in Leduc and Ponoka. So I just wanted to make sure that I stopped by and, you know, just checked in with you guys to kind of get your thoughts on it, make sure that you were aware of it, which I'm sure you all are, and to just share the resources I have. As I understand it, it's not open to the general public for any of the behind the scenes discussions, only elected officials. And thusly, I just wanted to make sure that all the resources were getting to you folks. So with that being said, did you guys have any questions of me, or did you want to see what I've brought for you in terms of resources today?
I sit on both the interim police advisory board as well as Alberta municipalities as a director. I attended one of the sessions in Camrose from the Justice and Solicitor General, asked a number of questions. Our provincial association, Alberta municipalities, just held a leaders caucus last week where membership voted to oppose the provincial police service. So provincially, we're actively working on maintaining the service that we have right now, just so you know that there is that motion also happening from the elected side of things as well.
Yes, absolutely. I kind of assumed you'd be involved in all of that, but again, wanted to stop in here today and make sure that.
Yeah, I appreciate
I
that.
heard it right
I
from
wasn't
you.
able to attend the NPF session, but one of our counselors, Karen Aberley, attended that session on my behalf.
Okay.
So we've got information from both the NPF and JSG in terms of the APPS.
You've got one of these booklets then?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, you
wonderful.
betcha.
Does
I've got an
anyone?
I've got an electronic copy of that too that I can send to council as well.
Okay. No, that's wonderful. If that's the case, then it looks like I'll be doing some recycling. One interesting thing that I took away from that meeting that I particularly wanted to speak about was an article that was written November 21st, 2021. And it's about the prosecutor shortage that puts 1,200 court cases at risk. The the Alberta Crown Attorneys Association came out with this article. And what I found so interesting about it is I'm, quite personal friends with a lot of RCMP members. Obviously, Dick Insurance works closely with the RCMP, and of course, in full transparency, it's a big part of why I'm here today. But not only that, I'm proud of Canada and its traditions, and I think the RCMP run deep in that. But I just found it very interesting that we're looking to spend so much more money provincially on a police force when there's obviously, other areas of the legal system that need it. And when I go to these RCMP events with these guys, that's what they're telling me. They're sitting around a fire and it's all happy and we're having beers. And then all of a sudden they start talking about some of their cases and how they fall through, and it gets a little gloomy and sad, and it's not very fun at that point. So I just wanted to make sure that, this also came to your guys' attention, as again, I just find it very strange that the Alberta government is putting forth this proposal when other areas of the legal system need it. So with that being said, would you guys like me to leave it behind at all? Or
You can
I can send it to you electronically, or?
pass that around. And what I'm really happy is that there are residents that know what's happening in terms of the proposal by the provincial government. Because right now, like you said, they aren't allowing anybody other than elected officials into their meetings with justice. So there was a promise from the premier that there was going to be a referendum on this as well. And that hasn't happened, nor does it look like it is going to happen. So the more residents that know that this is happening through justice and the provincial government, the better, I think. Thanks, Ken.
This is just the cover page. I didn't print the whole article. I just thought you could pull it up digitally if you wanted to get more involved. But thank you for the information today, Tyler. Appreciate it. I'm happy to know that you're active and kind of opposing it.
Very active.
Fantastic. And if there's anything you need, we have teamed up with the MPF, the RCMP National Union. If there's anything that comes up that you hear of that needs support or funding or anything like that, please let me know. Okay?
Just making sure that more residents are aware of the proposal by justice and the provincial police or provincial government, that they're looking at a provincial police service, because right now the only ones that seem to really know about it are electeds across the province. And that's only because of the two associations between RMA and Alberta municipalities are making the membership aware, but it's not getting into the residents, or the knowledge isn't getting made aware to the residents. So I appreciate you bringing that forward and then being an advocate as well, so that more residents are aware of what's happening.
You betcha. No, thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Awesome.
Stay well,
Thanks,
guys.
Ken. welcome. Come on up. Is Megan joining you?
No, it's just me today. We're flipping the coin each time we do this. Thank you all for letting me come and chat with you guys. I am here for the museum today, and I just wanted to say, I know budget talks have happened and it sounds like we're getting 50,000. So thank you guys so much for that. The reason why I'm here today is because normally with the contract we've had with the city, that money comes to us in February. With budget deliberations being kind of pushed back and different timelines and things changing, we are looking at how do we keep our doors open and our lights on until that money comes in. So what I'm wondering from you guys is if today there could be a motion passed or something so that we could expedite that check coming to us, or how that would work.
That would be, so following the presentation, if somebody wanted to make add an agenda item
Okay,
for that, yeah, absolutely.
okay. Thank you guys so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. Happy birthday to your munchkin.
Thank you. Did Mahmood? Nope. Okay, we'll carry on from that. Nobody else registered for open mic? Perfect. That. Following the open mic, are there any motions wanting to be added to the agenda? Councilor Nielsen?
I don't know that it's a motion at this point, but I wonder if I'd like to follow up on the feasibility of
Sure.
the
Yep.
city's grant to the museum.
Okay, not a motion then, just an added agenda item.
And we could include a motion at the time of discussion.
Yep.
That'd be fine. Thank you.
Yeah. 16I will be museum discussion. Discussion. Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Five A, approval of the minutes, committee of the whole meeting minutes of February 28th, 2022.
I move that city council approves the committee of the whole meeting minutes of February 28th, 2022.
Moved by Councillor Lonsdale. Any errors or omissions? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried.
I move that city council approves the minutes of the regular council meeting, February 28th, 2022.
Moved by Councillor Lonsdale. Any errors or omissions? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously.
I move that city council approve the minutes of the budget deliberations, February 28th, 2022.
Moved by Councillor Lonsdale. Any errors or omissions? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Moving on to 8A, public hearing for bylaw 2013-22, road closure lane within plan 752-1197 north of lot 43, plan 752-1197. I declare the public hearing regarding proposed bylaw 2013-22 be open at 13:14. I'd ask the manager of planning and engineering to explain the purpose of the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this public hearing is to satisfy section 22 sub 4 of the Municipal Government Act, which requires anyone who may be affected by a road closure must be given opportunity to speak to council. In addition, council approved the disposition of this portion of the lane on February 14th at that council meeting, and approved first reading of this bylaw 2013-22 at the February 28th council meeting. This is all part of the procedure that has to happen before the land can be sold. So this lane has to be closed by bylaw, which includes the public hearing.
Has notice of this hearing been provided in accordance with the applicable legislation and bylaws of the city of Wetaskiwin?
Yes, it has. The public hearing must be advertised according to our advertising bylaw at least 10 days prior on the website. This was advertised on February 28th, which is more than that 10 days. It was also posted on the Facebook and Twitter pages on February 28th and advertised in the Pipestone Flyer on March 3rd.
Thank you. I'd request that the Development Services provide their report regarding this matter.
Thank you very much. So this lane, subject to this closure, was created in 1975 under that plan, 752-1197. Since that time, the surrounding lands have been developed, and this laneway doesn't serve a transportation purpose anymore, nor is a lane necessary in this location. So the lane doesn't serve any purpose. It's not a legal access to any adjacent lots, and so essentially we don't need it. The end of the lane was closed in 1998, and this portion is just the remainder of that lane. So functionally, it's not used as a lane right now, and it would be in the city's best financial interest to ideally sell it, put the money towards more effective programs or services. Currently, Public Works spends approximately $1,000 a year on wages and equipment in maintaining this location. That's keeping any grass down and cleaning up garbage. This also represents about 24 hours of staff time. So ideally, these resources could be better used elsewhere.
Have we received any written submissions?
We have not.
I now call upon anyone who wishes to speak directly to council on this matter. First, we will call upon those who have registered prior to the meeting, and then anyone else who wishes to speak may have the opportunity. Please note that all speakers will be given no more than 5 minutes to speak. Do you have anybody registered? Any person wishing to speak or present? Any person wishing to speak to this matter? Third and final, is there anyone wishing to speak to this matter? Thanks very much, Andrew. Council will discuss and debate this matter later in the agenda. I declare this public hearing closed at 13:18. A March presentation, Winter Shelter Advisory Board.
Good afternoon, Council. I've asked Rachel Rarick to attend the meeting today to provide an update in regards to the winter shelter. And just to note, administration has made a decision to shut down the Winter Shelter Advisory Board in that it was there has been a duplication between the weekly shelter advisory meetings that are happening as well as this monthly advisory board. And so it's just in the best interest of our time to consolidate those two, and we shall do so moving forward.
Thank you. Welcome, Rachel.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. I'm here to provide you with an update of the Winter Shelter Advisory Board. We know that discussions are currently taking place between the GOA and the Mustard Seed about extending the shelter past March 31st. At our most recent meeting, we addressed the closing and what it would mean for the folks who currently utilize the shelter. Per the Mustard Seed's presentation at Council on February 14th, the latest known number given to us this morning is 192 unique individuals who are using the shelter for a variety of causes. The tent encampment to the south of the Walmart has also been closed since council meeting on February 14th. It closed February 20th. We had personnel over there cleaning up and the following week, and we plan to have them return once the snow and ice have melted to clean up any remaining debris. Administration has been working proactively with Avenue Living to increase the police presence around the mall that they have been observing. Since we started working with Avenue Living, we have noticed a slight decrease in events. Administration will continue to work with Avenue Living and will keep council informed as this file progresses. So our next board meeting was canceled for March 16th. And yeah, thank you. And I can take any questions that you may have.
Perfect, thank you. Entertain a motion and then we can have some questions. Councilor Nielsen,
I move that City Council receives the presentation titled March Presentation Winter Shelter Advisory Board dated March 14th, 2022 as information.
moved by Councilor Nielsen. Any discussion? Councilor Nielsen.
Good afternoon. You indicated right off the bat, 192 unique individuals accessing the shelter. Do they break that data out in any way in terms of how many are accessing it for overnight shelter versus how many are accessing it for counseling and that kind of thing?
Yes, so from the last council meeting, the presentation from the mustard seed, they had broken them down into specifics of what they are using the shelter for. So that number has just increased to 192. It was at 161, I think, from that last presentation. So they have been breaking it down to seeing what they are using it for. So overnight, daytime, phone calls, things like that.
And how do we get access to that kind of information?
I get access from it during the weekly shelter advice or the weekly shelter meetings every Monday.
Would it be possible to have that information shared with council through Paul?
Yep, I can for sure do that.
Great, thank you so much.
No problem.
Anything else? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
You as well. Let's see Gabby's, oh, is she still up? Okay. Item 12, bylaw 2013-22, road closure lane within plan 752-1197 north of lot 43, plan 752-1197. Second and third readings.
Mr. Mayor.
Thanks
I
again,
would-
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is now second and third readings of this bylaw. So again, first reading was passed on February 28th. The land was approved for disposition February 14th. Again, just a quick recap for the record. So this lane was created in 1975. In 1998, the end portion of the lane was subdivided and sold off. So this is just the remaining portion. It was never used as a laneway and doesn't currently serve a transportation purpose in this area. Particularly, it has become a place for people to congregate. And even though it is not a official park space or public gathering area, there's no facilities like seating, picnic benches or garbage cans or anything like that. And so Public Works does spend quite a bit of time cleaning it up and maintaining grass and things like that, which represents approximately 24 hours of staff time and $1,000 per year. And so administration believes these resources could be better used elsewhere. And I believe that is all the details. If council has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Councilor Elliott?
Is it safe to make a motion now? I would move that council approve second reading of bylaw 2013-22.
Moved by Councilor Elliott. Any discussion? Councilor Nielsen.
Thank you. Through the chair to Andrew. Andrew, until the said roadway is actually disposed of, we will still have responsibility for grass cutting, maintenance, garbage pickup, and so forth. Is that not correct?
Through the mayor, that's correct. Yes.
So we will not see any cost savings then until such time as that property is disposed of?
That's right.
And so is there cement barricades put in place on that roadway?
Through the mayor, no, there isn't anything like that at the moment.
So the roadway would remain open, although we're closing it?
Yes, technically that's right. I don't think anybody ever uses it as a roadway.
Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Andrew, has there been anybody asking about purchasing that property?
Through the mayor, I believe that there have been some discussions, although nothing concrete at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that council approve third reading of bylaw 2013-22.
Moved by Counselor Elliott. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Also carried unanimously. Added agenda item 12B, lifting a motion regarding our internal borrowing. Welcome.
It's on the very top there, Diana.
No, top of the
On the
mic.
microphone itself.
I thought it was on for everybody else and I didn't think anyone put it off. Did you put it off? Way to go. Yeah, probably. Yes, she's watched my faux pas with these. In any event, I know that council wanted to postpone or table this particular motion pending updates with regards to the reserves and in particular the infrastructure tax reserve from which administration was making the recommendation that both of these items be funded from. And council has received that information. And at this point in time, there are sufficient funds within the infrastructure tax reserve to fund the city's portion of the local improvement, as well as to fund the internal borrowing. With regards to the internal borrowing, when we do the internal borrowing, we would also on an annual basis return the funds from the local improvements to the infrastructure tax reserve. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Motion is on your screen. Counselor Bennett.
Just a clarification question. So we will not be borrowing money. We will be taking it out of reserves for this. Is that?
Basically, yeah, but it is treated as an internal borrowing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we're
Yes.
not going out to market for money. Okay, thank you.
Counselor Nielsen,
You're saying motions on the floor or you want it on the
I
floor?
would like a motion on the floor to lift the motion from the table.
I move the city council lifts motion 0722-22 from the table, which reads 077-/22. Move the council approve the funding of the city's portion of the local improvement relating to bylaw 1908-18 in the amount of $66,466.91 to be funded from the unrestricted reserve.
That was the motion that was made at the last
Yeah.
meeting. Correct.
That's the motion we're lifting from the table. Moved by Counselor Nielsen. Any discussion? Counselor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, this is which reserve this is coming from? This is the unrestricted reserve, not the infrastructure reserve.
No, that's incorrect. We are requesting that the funding for the city's portion of the local improvement be funded from the infrastructure tax reserve.
I know, but that's not what's written there, Mr. Mayor. So-
What was the original motion?
Was
Yeah,
unrestricted.
so this is the original motion. We're lifting it from the table. The new motion can read from the infrastructure reserve.
Okay, thank you.
So
Counselor Nielsen.
just a point of question then. So do we defeat this to put a new motion on the floor or can we make an
You
amendment?
can
to this
make an
motion?
amendment.
I would so move the amendment.
We have to lift it from the table before we can address. it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously.
I would now so move the amendment.
to the amendment. Any discussion? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Just for clarification, Diana, sorry, through the chair to Diana. So then, because this is internal borrowing and any recouped funds go back into the infrastructure reserve. So there may be residents who pay the full amount up front, and so that would go directly back into the infrastructure reserve fund.
Let me just step back a bit.
Okay,
This first motion is not internal borrowing. This first motion is funding the city's portion of the local improvement. So the 66,466.91 is the city's portion of that local improvement. So
Okay.
that's going to be funded directly from the infrastructure tax. We're not going to be putting that back.
okay,
Okay.
fine, thank you.
Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Now to the motion. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
So now we have a second motion regarding the internal borrowing.
Okay.
Okay, so the second motion is with regards to the internal borrowing. And further to Councillor, through the mayor to Councillor Nielsen, a portion of that local improvement related to not only the city, but also the United Church. And the United Church asked to pay it up front, and they have done that. And so as a result of that, we're only going to do the internal borrowing for the net amount. Okay.
Do you have that motion?
I was there, or was it not? It's on the agenda. That council direct administration to borrow 524,770 from the infrastructure reserve to fund the amount of the local improvement costs of the capital projects approved under bylaws 1908-18 and 1971-20, with the reserve being replenished on an annual basis from the local improvement taxes levied against the benefiting properties. It's on the agenda item if you have that handy. The previous meeting.
Oh.
Yeah.
May I ask for 2 minutes just to pull that up?
Yeah.
Thank you.
absolutely.
Do you want me to just give it to you? Yeah, and Karen, could you just say infrastructure tax reserve for clarification? I believe council is more familiar with it as the infrastructure tax reserve. Thank you.
So this is a separate motion. Nothing has to be lifted from the floor then.
Correct.
Okay, I move that council directs administration to borrow $524,770 from the infrastructure tax reserve to fund the amount of the local improvement costs of the capital projects approved under bylaws 1908-18 and 1971-20, with the reserve being replenished on an annual basis from the local improvement taxes levied from the benefiting properties.
Moved by Councillor Nielsen. Any discussion? Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. Through the chair to Diana. What sort of term or what is the term of this loan then?
I believe it's 25 years.
Thank you.
Councillor Nielsen.
Do we know what would be coming back into the infrastructure reserve tax annually as a result of this motion?
Yes, we do, but I don't have it with me.
Okay.
I can,
And it would be a standard amount each year for the next 25 years until it's paid off.
correct, just as if we were borrowing it
Right.
externally.
And there is no interest rate charged to property owners?
Yes, there is. We will charge the same amount of interest to the property owners within the local improvement as we would have had we borrowed externally. So at the time that the bylaw was passed for the local improvement, we had done the local improvement plan, and that included the amount of the interest rate that would have been applied at that time. So
And off
yes,
the top of your head, would you know what that tax rate is?
the interest rate,
Yes.
I believe it was 3.26.
Okay, thank you.
That's under the new borrowing rate.
This would have been under the old, we would have ran the information under ACFA at the time.
Okay.
And that was what we could have borrowed from them at that time.
And the benefit to internal borrowing as opposed to external?
In this instance, it's basically, I believe at this point in time, we're actually benefiting the property owners because we would be paying higher rates. Plus, this is two borrowing instruments that we would have difficulty borrowing externally for, particularly through the provincial government, because they have changed their requirements. And based on the way that our bylaws were approved at the time, they're no longer approved in that format.
Councillor Bielanza.
Sorry, I had to think about that for a second. So going forward,
Mhm.
are we going to run into problems? So if there's a larger project,
No, we will not. Going forward, we will do, basically have a local improvement bylaw approved by council. And then subsequent to that, we would have a separate borrowing bylaw approved by council.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Anything further? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tana. (16A) rescinding policy CO-029 curb and sidewalk inspection maintenance policy.
Good afternoon, council. Today before you, administration is requesting that we rescind policy CO-029 curb and sidewalk inspection maintenance policy due to the fact that it is an internal operating procedure on how we inspect our concrete on concrete that is owned by the city. So we are requesting that this policy be rescinded. If you have any questions, I can be happy to answer them.
I move that city council rescinds policy CO-029 curb and sidewalk inspection maintenance policy.
Moved by Councillor Bielanza, excuse me. Any discussion? Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Through the chair to Kathy. So Kathy, if we have a policy and a procedure, the policy takes precedent.
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, in this case, because it is a council policy, yeah, it would take precedence over an internal procedure.
And so is the internal procedure less rigorous than the policy stated?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, no, it would be exactly the same. It would just be an internal procedure rather than a council policy.
Thank you.
We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. 16B, request of council to administration permit statistics.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. At the February 14th council meeting, Planning and Development had presented the permitting stats, and a question was asked of council to look at surrounding communities or comparator communities to do some sort of trending and see if our permits were out of line. I asked Planning and Development to give us a time estimate on how much time this would take each month. Each month for comparator trends would be about 3 hours per month. And then originally that deeper dive into why some of the things or the trends that have been happening that was presented at the last meeting would take about 2 hours. That would be a one-time thing. And given the tight constraints on staff time these days, we brought this back for council approval. If this is something that council wants, we would prefer a motion. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I move that city council directs administration to complete community comparatives each month as part of the permit statistics report.
Thank you. I guess this is going to be to council. I don't know if we need this data this often with the amount of staff time and what we're actually going to use and what we're going to do with the data, that this could either be semi-annually or possibly annually, could give us a snapshot anyway. And I don't know if it's going to be relevant information every month.
No, my point exactly. Thank you. Question? Through the chair to Sue. So if council sees value in getting some level of support, as Councilor Billingsley talked about, whether it's quarterly or semi-annually or annually, is that something that you through your office simply puts into place, or do you need a motion from council to have this happen on a less frequent basis?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, I think especially until we're through the PBB discussion with council, it's going to be important for us to bring all of these forward to council for a motion. So any extra time spent on anything, we would be looking for a resolution. Once we get through PBB and we've already had that discussion with council, those service standards would be set. And again, if something needs to change, we would be looking for motion. So this is going to be something that we're regularly going to bring forward with requests of council. We'll do the investigation internally, find out how much time it takes, and then come back and find out if it's worth it for council to consider. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Council. I have Diana and Kathy both here to help with this one. This was a project that was partially previously approved through our annual maintenance program and then turned into a bit of an emergency and has been postponed a couple of different times. We've been in front of council to redirect funds because tenders came in over budget, etc. From a financial perspective, the approvals that we went through is a complete nightmare for finance to be able to go through and reconcile. And in the hopes of making this easier for our finance department moving forward, we're hoping to get one approval for all of the previously approved projects into one motion so that finance could then put those charges against one project. It's going to make it easier for year-end financials, as well as for Kathy's team in managing the project and only having one code to code to. So there's no extra money being requested here. It's just the reallocation of the previously approved projects into one project.
I move that city council directs administration to close capital project CP 00829, 00830, 00831, 00832, 00836, 00860, 00861, 00862, 00863, 00864, 00865, and 00866 to reallocate the unexpected funds from these projects towards completion of the 55th Avenue capital project.
Moved by Councilor Billingsley. Questions? Counselor Nelson.
Through the chair, so these are all the elements that were individually set aside, established, I guess is the right word. Are any of these, after reconsideration of the project, being removed, or will all of these items be addressed? Like, is there changes to this? For example, I'll just pull a number out. CPO, CP 00832, fire hydrant main valve replacement. They'll all be included. We aren't going to close that portion and redirect $205,000 somewhere else into the project.
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, so originally, part of the project was to do pieces of hydrant replacement, valve replacement, those sorts of things. So there were elements of each one of these originally that we were going to go to. When the project expanded and they opened everything up and realized that it was a much bigger issue, they started reallocating. As you know, there's a long list of projects that need to be done in each of these categories. And so as the team went through, and I believe it was 2020, Jason had come back and asked council to take all of those projects and just put them towards this work. So there are elements of it. I'll use lead pipe replacement as an example. So there's 50,000 in there in the one project. We might have 5 lead services. The rest of the money would go towards the rest of the water portion of that project. So it doesn't necessarily meet the original intent of those projects, but as the scope was defined in the 2020, all of the money would be used just for 55th Avenue.
So everything that's required to finish the project would be incorporated in this sum of dollars.
Yes.
Thank you.
And anything further? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Item D, municipally controlled corporation, Peace Hills Utilities, Inc.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. As previously noted, we are giving council monthly updates on the MCC. So as of, I believe it was Friday, March 8th, the MCC was incorporated through our lawyer's firm. And since then, we have been putting together the documents required for the unanimous shareholders agreement, which is attached. The next steps are to approve the board of directors for the unanimous shareholders agreement, and then we could get that registered and then move on to insurance. In the MCC unanimous shareholder agreement, we have allocate or designated Grant Thornton as our auditors. And this was on purpose, especially for the transition between it being a city department into municipally controlled corporation, so that we're not offsides with our finances. And then we would also be looking at, sorry, I said insurance already, this, and then moving our bank account as well. So we would be opening up a bank account for the MCC with Scotia Bank, again, to make it easier to transfer over those funds and work with our auditors. So I would be looking for 3 councillors today to be appointed to the board of directors, and then a second motion in case we needed a backup for a 4th council member to be a director. I should note, although it was previously noted, that both Mrs. Lewin and myself will be as well part of the board of directors, as well as one person from Aquaterra, who is going to be the operator for the utilities, and one from Graham Capital, who is the financer. And so there is the odd number required for the MCC, which we meet, and city council would have the majority of the votes, and it is 100% owned by the city of Wetaskiwin. So I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
There's 7 members. So council wouldn't have the majority vote.
Council has 3 and 2 city staff.
Council doesn't have to.
I would hope we vote with council. There is always opportunity, as previously noted, to have more. You could have community members, you could have more council members. The only requirement is that it has to be odd and it can't be more than 15 members. So we could certainly look at adding more. And I should note, I've spoken to the lawyers, and at any time in the future, they said it is quite easy to add more boards of directors or more members.
Councillor Elliott.
Is a motion in order, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
Seeing as how my name's not down there. I move that City Council appoints councillors Dean Billingsley, Karen Aberley, and Wayne Nielsen to the Board of Directors for the MCC as per the terms and conditions of the attached unanimous shareholders agreement. I don't know what unanimous means in there, but I'm reading it off the board. If you could explain what unanimous means.
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, that's actually what the document is called. So we have to have a unanimous shareholders agreement to list the board of directors. So this was sent to us by our lawyers.
Oh, okay. I'm fine. I just needed clarification. It just didn't make sense. So I move such, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. I believe you're not on the list because you were a pacifist, if I remember correctly. Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. To Sue through the chair. How difficult then and how quickly and is it council that decides if we want more people to sit on this board? And would it be before this agreement is done, or is once this passes, then the board is set up? Does that make sense?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Billingsley, in the unanimous shareholders agreement, City Council has full and unfettered authority to appoint, remove, or do anything with the board of directors, and it is quite quick. So once we get a motion from council, we sign the document and send it through for legal review and then registration. In the future, if you wanted to go with this, and then let's say at the next meeting, you want to make another motion to add other people, we just need a council motion to do that. And then I would send it to the lawyers and they would register it. It could happen quite quickly.
Thank you.
Anything else? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that City Council appoints Councillor Kevin Lonsdale as the alternate member of the Board of Directors for the MCC.
It's moved by Councillor Elliott. Any discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Item 16E, notice of motion, Hope Mission.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Good afternoon. This was a notice of motion sent in by Councillor Blatz. I'm not sure if she wants to speak to it or not. Okay, she does.
Good afternoon, everyone. Everyone can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So at the last council meeting, we heard from Hope Mission, and in their presentation, their ask was for a 2-acre parcel of land donation, and they would build and fund their own facility for the city of Wetaskiwin. Their approach was a multi-level facility with transitional housing as part of the strategy. And I was thinking that this could address our ongoing open and close issue that we have with shelters and the financial impact that this has been on our community every year. I wanted to bring this forward to start the conversation on potentially having administration get the ball rolling on what we need to go ahead. So I just wanted to start the conversation on that.
Would you like to make that motion?
Yes, I can. I move that City Council directs administration to take the steps needed to subdivide a 2-acre parcel for a future shelter site on city-owned land, 37A Avenue.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Any discussion? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if this is through to Andrew or to the CAO, but what does it cost for subdivision permits and to move ahead with that? Is it,
Yeah.
is it?
That. Sorry, through the chair. It depends. For one parcel, it would probably be about 5,000, could be up to 10,000. That's including the surveying that would be required, and land titles fees and things like that.
Thank you, Andrew. And the other thing I thought about as I was reading this, do we need to notify the surrounding neighborhood of our intent, or do we just go ahead and subdivide and then seek their input? Just not sure which procedure we would do first. Would we say, how do you feel about this? Or we're subdividing now, and how do you feel about this?
Andrew, what's the process?
Yeah, I can answer that one as well. So the minimum process would be a mail out to the adjacent properties at the time of subdivision or potentially rezoning or potentially both. So that would be the minimum requirements. And then I think after that, it would be, I guess, up to council or potentially a question for communications about where does our public engagement policy, what does that direct, and what engagement should we do?
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I think given our history, a more thorough public consultation would probably be in our best interest. Making sure that all parties are aware as we move forward, if we're looking at subdivision, that the reason behind that is also shared with the adjoining properties. Adjacent property surrounding said parcel of land. Anything further? Councillor Nielsen.
Just clarification on your comments, Your Worship. So are you seeing community engagement occurring as a result of subdivision, or are you suggesting we should be engaged in the community before we entertain?
No, I'm saying that if we're going to subdivide that part of our consultation process includes a subdivision with the properties that are around that. Councillor Billingsley.
So our first step would be engagement before we subdivide. Would that?
Yeah, letting the property owners around there know that that's our intention. Councillor Lonsdale.
Thank you, sir. Through the chair to Andrew, if we go ahead with the subdivision and it's going to be a permanent structure, is there going to be rezoning needed as well? Or is the land there right now zoned for that?
Through the chair, if I recall correctly, that land is zoned urban reserve, and I believe it would need to be rezoned to urban services to accommodate this type of use. So yes, it would require rezoning.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through to Andrew. Andrew, normally, what is the scope of the circumference that we have to share with people? Is it 200 people within 275 meters?
I believe the mail out at this point would be any property within 75 meters. And considering the properties there are pretty big, that would be really just the adjacent properties.
So we wouldn't extend it any further to some of the surrounding businesses who may be affected and who are affected right now sometimes?
Through the chair, that's just the minimum is the 75 meters. We certainly can include more people if we deem that to be beneficial.
I'm just thinking of some of the businesses surrounding there, Mr. Mayor, that may be affected, that may not be within the 75 meters, but may still have some concerns.
You can make a follow-up motion if you'd like to include a public consultation, which would include whatever you feel is appropriate.
Thank you.
Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. I guess through the chair to Councillor Blatz, I'm sort of, I'm wondering, although it's evident, I guess, in the motion, but I'm wondering what we're trying to accomplish. To my knowledge, even through budget discussions yesterday, we have indicated some clarification on the roles that the city will play in establishing action regarding the homeless situation. And we've had a brief conversation with Hope Mission without any follow-up. I'm wondering what the urgency is in terms of subdivision when we don't have necessarily any conversations of either the GOA or any conversations with Hope Mission or any conversations with Mustard Seed, that we actually have a prospective facility provider for this project. So we end up subdividing, and if there is no takers, then do we just unsubdivide? Because if we subdivide with a purpose to have an establishment there that may not occur. So I'm wondering if we aren't putting the cart before the horse in terms of, again, clearly identifying, are we leaning on the GOA to lead the parade? Do we want to engage in a conversation with Hope Mission for Hope Mission to lead the parade? I guess it's an open-ended question. I'm having trouble understanding who we're preparing this for in terms of a provider.
Yeah, so I can answer that. Technically, what Hope Mission was asking for in their presentation was the 2-acre parcel of land. And so they were already talking about how that is what they need in order to get the ball rolling. So with that in mind, that is why this motion came about. I think that we have been in the business of shelters for a while now, and we have spoken at length about the fact that the city doesn't want to be in the business of running a shelter. And we finally have someone that came forward that expressed great interest in taking that on. And the only part of the city that has to be our role is providing that parcel of land. And so to me, I think that this is kind of the perfect situation for us. And so my purpose of the motion is to be engaging with Hope Mission and talking with them about the parcel of land.
So then, if I understand correctly, your motion implies that Hope Mission is our partner in this project.
Hope Mission in their last presentation was talking about how they would like to be our partner. And so it would be engaging with them and following up with them and talking with them about potentially moving forward on the parcel of land.
Then I guess I wonder if for me, then the motion is misplaced in the sense that we need to have a motion that directs administration to enter into conversations with council and Hope Mission, as opposed to doing the land subdivision prior to having a conversation with Hope Mission. My comments only.
Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd hate to subdivide this land based upon a brief presentation without seeing a business plan. It was they seem to do good work, and I'm not discounting what they do at all. And it'd sure be nice if what he said he could do gets done in our community. But it was just a brief presentation. There was no meat in the sandwich. There was no business plan. There was no anything there. And we're going to go spend anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 based on a very short presentation without really knowing any substance.
I would offer a suggestion that this motion gets tabled and a subsequent motion gets brought forward on a direction from council for administration to enter into talks with Hope Mission.
I would be cool with that.
Perfect. Just need somebody to make the tabling
I
motion.
will,
I can table the motion.
Councillor Elliott motion moves to table the motion. Ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried unanimously.
is it inherent in that administration will be looking into that?
No, it needs to be a motion. of council.
Okay, I'll let Councillor Blatz, she's the one who's moving on this one, so go ahead.
Sure. I guess we'll get to read. I move that City Council directs administration to enter in discussion with Hope Mission on the future shelter proposal.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Any discussion? Councillor Nielsen.
Through the chair to Paul. Yesterday, when we were talking about budget and you put a case study forward for help to deal with community development issues. The mayor asked you for clarification on what it meant if that supports were not provided. And I think your response was then without the assistance, this is a role that we don't have the manpower to lead. Would that be a fair representation of your comments or not?
Through the mayor to Councillor Nielsen, in regards to the business case for the discussion around the community development coordinator, administration does not have adequate staffing capacity to continue engaging the community in some of this committee work that we're doing around some of these complex issues. So some of the community work we have in play right now is the community safety and well-being, diversity and inclusion task force, as well as we've been engaging the community on the winter shelter advisory board, as well as weekly emergency shelter meetings on behalf of the mustard seed. And so we have been receiving a grant since November of last year to fund some of that staffing. I am currently in discussions with the government of Alberta to extend that grant and should be hearing from them within the next day or so. In regards to this specific item, I believe that the staffing capacity at this level, because it's so preliminary, would be between both myself and the CAO at this point, and engaging their senior leadership of their organization. We would do this type of work as directed by council, and it generally is in the purview of the CAO and the GM to do that. In regards to where it goes and future staffing capacity, administration would come back to council if we didn't have adequate staffing capacity to take on the motion such as this. But I believe between myself and the CAO that we would be able to accommodate this.
If I could follow up, please. Would you foresee, because as Councillor Blatz identified, the presentation from Hope Mission was promising, and but they indicated that even if they got started, we would not see anything for approximately 2 years. So my question, I guess, through the chair to Paul would be, would you foresee risk in Mustard Seed continuing a shelter operation next winter if we are in conversations with the Mustard Seed about long-term viability?
For a long-term conversation with Hope Mission.
Through the mayor to Councillor Nielsen, haven't had those conversations with the Mustard Seed specifically. They are aware that the Hope Mission has done a presentation. The position of the Mustard Seed in conversations that they've had with council and that I've had with them is that they do believe there is a solution is required here in Wetaskiwin, and they have made it known to me that they don't necessarily need to be the provider, but that they do see the need for a solution here in the community. So in regards to where their perception of our discussions with the Hope Mission and how that might impact the relationship moving forward, I haven't had those conversations. I do know that as Rachel noted in her presentation earlier, the government is looking at extending the existing shelter with the Mustard Seed. And so I can't speak to it any more than I can.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything further? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. We are taking a 5-minute bio break. Okay, we will reconvene. We're on 16F, notice of motion, Rural Transit Solution Fund.
Alrighty, hello again. So basically on February 10th, 2021, the Prime Minister, Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, and the Minister of Environment and Climate Change announced $5.9 billion in new funding for public transit in active transportation over 5 years, beginning in 2021 and 2022. And the permanent annual envelope is $3 billion ongoing. And so this project is called the Rural Transit Solutions Fund. I received an email from FCM that was talking about this. And a lot of you know that I've been taking the climate action course for municipal leaders. And so the reason why I'm bringing this forward now is because the application deadline for the grant is April 7th. So it's coming up really quick. But I decided to further investigate what this initiative entails. And over the months of door knocking, both in 2019 and 2021, I heard nonstop from seniors and young people that they want better access to public transit. Currently, we have the transit handy van that has dispatch available. Rides are available for seniors or those with mobility issues. And in-town trips must be booked at least 48 hours in advance. Out-of-town trips must be booked 2 weeks in advance. So while this addresses some of the issues that seniors face with mobility, it doesn't address the young people who have to go to work every day. It's also largely inconvenient for individuals who don't have regular access to phones. The Rural Transit Solutions Fund can be used for the creation of bus stops and purchasing of buses, which could be a solution to some of the issues with transit within our community. The funding amount is around $3 million if successful, but we wanted to do a green solution. So using something like energy efficient buses, it would be $5 million. Keep in mind, all I'm asking right now is for approval for writing the grant application. But this would address our lack of public transit, affordability of transit for individuals who can't afford cab rides twice a day, and introduces new green solutions as ride sharing reduces greenhouse gas emissions. I think that as a smaller municipality, it's important that we continue to try and show our leadership in environmental sustainability. And I think that this helps address that, whether we go the route of electric buses or not, because of course, ride sharing is a great option for keeping our city green. But yeah, no, so that is my presentation on this.
Thank you, Councillor. You want to make the motion and then we can get into discussion?
Absolutely. I move that City Council directs administration to explore the Rural Transit Solution Fund to start a transit service, including creating bus stops for regular passenger service to the public.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Go ahead, Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. Question is to Sue through the chair. What is the staffing cost to do the portion that in the motion?
Through the chair to Councillor Billingsley, do you mean like how much staff time it would
Time.
take to do this?
Yes.
I'd have to look into this. It would be probably a combination between someone in Paul's area who manages transit and finance for grant coordination. I could get that for the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just to cut you off. Can we, just a reminder that if you've got questions that are going to require some information coming back, just give them administration a heads up that these questions are going to be asked so that they can have the information now instead of it coming back at a later meeting.
Okay. My next question is to Gabby. You talked about this grant. What would our share be?
Currently, our share is nothing. So what it is basically they're trying to give 100% funding from the federal government. So that is essentially what it is right now, is that they have been given billions of dollars for this project, and they really want to get this out to communities, especially communities that have a large Indigenous population. So right now there is no ask of the municipality.
So within the grant, it's 100% funding.
Yeah, so within the grant, it's 100% funding from the federal government.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Blatz. Is the $300,000 or the $3 million to $5 million, would the $3 million just be for capital, or is there operating involved as well?
If I remember correctly, it is construction or procurement of bus stops, buses, minivans, small craft, procurement of zero emission buses, engineering and consultation fees, including fees associated with maintenance, building, renovating, and improving fixed capital assets, costs associated with data collection, the evaluation of the projects, and information exchange and dissemination of the results of the project in relevant fora. Other costs that are considered to be direct and necessary for the successful implementation of the project. So it's a whole bunch of different things, but it's also capital.
So if we asked for $3 million and they approved, we would get $3 million. That's what you're suggesting?
That is, to the best of my knowledge, that is what that means. Okay. Unless we went with zero emission buses, in which case we would get $5 million.
How about autonomous buses?
A good question. I don't know.
Then we could save money on drivers as well.
That is true. We could also be one of the first rural municipalities to do that, so I'd be into it.
Go for it. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry. I just want, the reason we're going through budget debates and the city is subsidizing Wetaskiwin Transit to the tune of $325,000 out of our next budget. And that's why I was asking about operating versus capital, because if it's going to cost us the same amount, it might cost us even more if there's bus stops involved and those kinds of things and running more frequently. So that's why I was concerned about the operating costs. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to address that really quick too, if I may. Because of the fact that this would be an ongoing bus service, it would also be a revenue source because of the fact that we would be having monthly bus passes that we could be supplying for residents. And so it could potentially increase our revenue in that field.
Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Through the chair to Gabby. Now, when I read the Rural Transit Solutions document, it talked about having a transit plan completed before you can apply for the big dollars. Have they changed the deadlines? Because the document I have here said that the transit plan deadline for a $50,000 grant was up until October 7th of 2021. And communities that have a transit plan in place could then submit for the capital projects, as you've suggested, of $3 and $5 million. But this document gives that deadline as March 31st. So to your knowledge, have they changed timelines then?
Not to my knowledge. I am not too sure. I know that they did the first round in 2021 and then they are doing the second round in 2022. So that's all I know from that, especially from the email that I got from FCM.
And Sue, through the chair to Sue, a number of years ago, we had a transit corporation in here and they did some work. That wasn't really a plan. That was just a conversation, was it not, about how they could meet some of the needs that Gabby's talking about in her motion?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, yeah, that would not be considered a transit plan. That was just them proposing to come in and take over transit for us and then expand those services.
So again, through the chair to Councillor Blatz, is it your understanding, Gabby, that we'd have to have a transit plan in order to apply for the $3 and $5 million grants?
I am not too sure, to tell you the truth.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Lonsdale.
Thank you, sir. Through the chair to Councillor Blatz. You had mentioned in the presentation that with our current transit, it's up to 2 weeks to book a trip into Edmonton. Now, what is the scope of this? Would this be looking at just within our own city limits, and other communities would have to set up their own to integrate with this, or are we branching out to other communities?
So the reason why I include that piece of information was just because I wanted to give scope as to what we currently do for transit. But having an existing transit line will make it easier for us to link into a regional transit service later.
Okay, thank you.
My only concern about, I mean, $3 or $5 million sounds wonderful, but I wonder about the maintenance costs of owning a fleet of buses or transportation, the cost of operation, fuel, and things like that. And it's one thing to be given the buses, but it's the ongoing cost that you would have every year. And I just wonder how many people will actually use the service, whether it's 25, 50, or 250 people. That's a lot of fares to make up the costs of maintenance and ongoing costs of drivers and things like such as that.
I don't have a problem with exploring rural transit solution funds. Full stop. And the reason I say full stop there is because we have had conversations around this table about how we can take our existing busing service, transit service, and potentially do what Gabby's proposing through this motion. I believe there is potential at a cost to create bus stops using our own transit system if we had available resources. Now, if those available resources came through the Rural Transit Solution Fund, that would be great. But this motion already dictates where we foresee transit going without an assessment of costs. So if we apply for grants and got $3 million, and then started addressing the cost of maintenance and gasoline and all the rest, of it, we find out it was a loser. Do we just say, sorry, it's not financially viable and give them back a bunch of money? But I think it's important that we examine all potential funding sources, for sure. I'm not comfortable with it predetermining the end solution here. So I want to support it, but
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but the motion says, is suggesting that we're directing administration to explore. So I think if we're talking to the motion, then to explore is fine. And they may come back and say, my gosh, the operating funds are just insurmountable. We can't do this, but this is at least an exploration. And a number of times they have come out with grants for capital, and then sometimes they will come out with a second grant for operational. So I think to have our administration explore that, as long as it's not too time heavy on them, I think it's worthwhile. Thank you.
just for clarification on your perspective, Your Worship. Because I agree with your position. But would you be in opposition to City Council directing administration to explore a rural transit solution funding? Stop.
I apologize for butting in here. I did not hear anything that Tyler said, so I didn't even know that he was talking. So if he could repeat his entire position, that would be great.
Now you're thinking that I'm going to remember what I said. I support the fact that we need additional transit within the community. I don't support administration going and finding or seeing if there's funds available for a grant that only speaks to the operating side of it, or sorry, only speaks to the capital side of it, not the operating side of it. And while we already subsidize transit for more than $300,000 a year, I'm not prepared to get into a position where we're going to be supporting or subsidizing transit for more than that. So, and then Councillor Nielsen asked if I supported that supported the motion as is, which I would. I wouldn't support a motion following that when, as it's written, there isn't funds available for operating. So I don't want to have administration spending time on something that I'm not going to support the outcome of if they're receiving capital funds and not operating. And as a grant or as the guide is written, there is no mention of or operating. Anything further? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Opposed? It's defeated. Councilors Elliott and Platts in favor. Item 16G, subdivision appeal board appointment.
Good afternoon, council. At the February 14th meeting, I requested an extension to the applications for the SDAB board members. We were still short one, and we did receive an application from a member, and the application met all of the requirements according to our bylaw. So with the addition of the new board member, we will have a full complement of members for the board. So my recommendation is I move that City Council appoints Dawn Proudlock to the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board with the term ending December 31st, 2025.
Pull that up on the screen and then-
Yes. And that's the end of my report. If you have any questions, please let me know.
I move that City Council appoints Dawn Proudlock to the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board with a term ending December 31st, 2025.
Moved by Councilor Lonsdale. Any discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Just for information sake, Karen and I are taking the course right now. We started this morning, and City Council appoints 2 councillors to this board, but we can only have 1 councillor on at a time on any panel. So I wondered why we appointed 2 councillors, because if we can only have 1, I guess one's a backup, but
Just having the alternate.
so anyway, I just found that very informative. Thank you.
You're just showing off that you learned something today?
Can I speak to that as well, too, please?
Sure.
So through the mayor to Councillor Elliott, I also remember when they were speaking about bias today too, that if there was a bias for one of the councillors and one councillor had to bow out of the appeal, then the other one could pick up the other one. So yeah, backup's always good to have.
Anything further? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. 16H, acknowledgement of happenings in Ukraine.
Thank you. I bring this forward only because I've had a few community members ask if the city was going to do anything to acknowledge the circumstances in Ukraine and the humanitarian crisis there. I indicated I would bring it forward. I haven't had a long lineup of hundreds of people asking me this, but I have had some. And I'm just wondering if there isn't something that the city could do that isn't onerous, but does acknowledge what's going on there. And I'd be prepared to put a motion forward.
Sure.
Thank you. I would like council to direct administration to take steps for the city to publicly acknowledge the circumstance in the Ukraine. And then I'd like to speak to that.
Sure.
Additionally. And again, I'm not on behalf of the citizens suggesting that we have to go crazy here. because I am aware of the time and work commitments of our staff. But whether it's something as, when I say simple, I don't mean to be disparaging with that. As simple as flying the Ukrainian flag, or hanging a flag in a city window, or a public acknowledgement on our webpage. It doesn't have to be a lot, but I wonder if it isn't worthy of a little bit of time and effort to recognize it. I do know that one person that spoke to me has family in Ukraine trying to get out. And so that was important to them that the city acknowledge it. Thank you.
I wore my blue and yellow tie and blue and yellow socks today in anticipation to your added agenda item. Alberta Municipalities is also looking at how municipalities can support even the refugees that are fleeing the Ukraine. City of Edmonton has made it a priority to make sure that any refugees that are fleeing the Ukraine have a place there as well. So there would be the opportunity for us to also include that if we wanted to. And I agree wholeheartedly that if we're able to hang a flag in our window and also share our support for Ukraine and those residents in and around Wetaskiwin. Go ahead.
I thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support Councillor Nielsen. Excuse me. I know of a family that is right now trying to get somebody out of Poland to come to their home in Wetaskiwin, and will support the mother and daughter, 13-year-old daughter. So there are people in our community who are accepting people from the Ukraine as well. So I definitely support this.
Anything further? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. 16I, museum discussion.
Thank you. I'm not ready to put a motion on the floor here yet. I'm looking for clarification from yourself or through finance, through the chair, sorry, to Sue. Budget has been finalized, but it hasn't been finalized in the context that comes up later on. We have long known that financing the museum can be difficult at times. And given their request, I'm wondering if and or how that request could be expedited through processes we currently have.
I can speak to that through the chair to Councillor Nielsen. Typically, when the grants are approved at budget, I create a check request and send it down to finance. And then it's usually whatever their process is for when they are doing a check run. And then we either mail it out or we could hand deliver it to them directly to speed that up. So
through the chair to you, Karen, has that process occurred?
To date, no, not yet. Previous years, yes, that's normal.
So I would be prepared to make a motion to direct administration to expedite that check run and ensure that the monies get into the hands of the Heritage Museum.
May I ask to include the dollar amount to that?
Do we usually give 2 checks a year?
We do,
So
yes.
first one would be 25,000.
Yes.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
And then the second check typically follows in about September.
You meant more than the 50.
Moved by Councillor Nielsen. Any discussion? This meeting's going too quickly, so I'm going to slow this down a little bit. Maybe, yeah. Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried, and I assume Gabby's still there? Councillor Blatz, are you in favor? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Thanks for coming to present. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Well, nobody's making a motion to adjourn, so I assume there's something else. That was by design. Moved by Counselor Blatt. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.